Okay, so the class is cloud for developers, and there's various cloud platforms out there that we could be using. So Google has their cloud services, Microsoft has Azure, and the one that we'll be focusing on for this semester is Amazon's web services, which is AWS. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to create an AWS account. So if I go to Google and do an AWS sign up search, I'm going to get a how to create an AWS account. So I'm going to go to the AWS Council, sign up, Amazon.com, or how to create an account. Either one is okay. I'm going to go ahead and go through this process. So a couple of things that I want to point out with this sign up process. So the root user email address means that you're going to be the account owner of this AWS account. And what that means is all the services that get used by this account, you're responsible for the bill. And ultimately, what's going to happen here is you might sign up for an AWS account, and let's say you wanted to manage your company on AWS. So you might have employees that also have access to your account, and maybe you're running a website, maybe you're running some kind of application. All of those things are going to generate or utilize AWS resources, and you're responsible for that bill. Okay, so having said that, when you sign up for AWS, it is going to require a credit card. So a credit card is a requirement of this course. So it will require a credit card when you sign up. So you're going to enter your root user email and your account name, and then you'll have to go through the verification process. I've already went through this process, so I'll be able to sign in to an existing AWS account. A couple of things here. So when I sign into an existing AWS account, so if I go to the sign in process, you'll notice that I get this account ID or account alias, an IAM username and a password. Or when you initially sign up, you're signing up with the root user account. I can sign in with the root user email. Okay, so here's the root user, and I can sign in with my email address. Okay, and then it's just a username and password that's going to be required to sign into that root user email address. Okay, so that's really the first step in this course is to create an AWS account that you're the root user of. You own that account. I will say that a credit card's required, and a lot of people have a hesitation about signing up for AWS with a credit card because you're getting charged based on the resources that you use. And I can't give you an answer when you ask, well, how much is that going to cost per month? What I will tell you is that you have a free trial. So, a free trial meaning you're going to have access to some resources for 6 months free of charge where you're in that trial period. I will also say that the services that we're going to use for this Cloud for Developers course are minimal, and ultimately, at the end of the semester, you may end up deciding that you want to register a domain name and host a website. Um, there are some charges for that. So registering a domain name costs $14 a year. Hosting a website, so if you're hosting a domain name through AWS, it ends up being 50 cents a month. All the other services, as long as we manage them correctly, I would expect that you wouldn't spend more than 50 cents a month just kind of experimenting and trying out the services. If you're on the free tier plan, I would expect your bill for AWS to be zero, other than maybe that website hosting. Okay, so ideally, what will happen is you'll create an account, and then once you've created an account, you'll be able to sign into your account. Okay, and I have multi-factor authentication signed in. And then I'm going to have my MFA code. And what I'm using Microsoft Authenticator. So I'm just going to pull up my phone, and I have authentication code here that's expiring in 2 seconds. So I'm going to let that expire. It's going to give me a new code, and I'm typing in that new code. And it looks like that authentication failed. Interesting. And it looks like it's failing. Um, okay, so I had some login issues with my MFA account. So I got those issues resolved. And after I've created a root user account, I'm going to go ahead and sign in. So I'm using my root user email address that I created the account with. I'm getting security check. I really can't tell what that first character is. And AWS is kind of notorious for this with their CAPTCHA, that it's a little bit more difficult to read than other CAPTCHAs. So it looks like I should be okay there. And then I'm just signing in with my password. And now I have my multi-factor authentication should be set up and working properly now. So now I should be able to go to punch in that code. And I'm using Microsoft Authenticator for that factor authentication application. So after I've created the account, you'll notice that I'm able to successfully sign in to AWS. Okay, and you'll notice that I'm getting a bill for 80 cents, and it looks like I'm getting some API gateway charges, some EC2 charges. Um, all of those look fine to me. Okay, so you can kind of see where I'm getting those different service charges. Okay, so I'm getting charged 70 cents a month. In March, it looked like I had a little bit higher costs, and I think that was the domain name renewal. So you can kind of see what my costs are in the AWS services. And again, my expectation for you for taking this class is, maybe you'll see 50 cents a month, but more likely, since you're on that free tier for the first 6 months, is that you won't see any charges related to AWS. And if you're worried about creating charges, there are opportunities to do that. Remember, AWS can scale as big as you want. Some huge companies use AWS to run their applications and run their companies. But most of the time, or I'd say all the time, you will know kind of what you're picking and choosing and what those associated costs are. So that bill that you generate is really your responsibility. And it's fairly obvious. It's not like they're all of a sudden going to start charging you daily service fees or anything like that. You'll know what those charges are. So ideally, you'll get an AWS account going, and this is the interface that we're going to be using to run this course.